Hey guys, so it seems Dancing Dervish is still pretty good for general clearing despite Necropolis adding a lot of danger and tankiness for monsters, but I was worried that it won't have enough damage, so I kind of invested most of my resources into damage and pretty much nothing into defenses. However, I still really like playing with this build, and just farming in general just feels chill and fine. Occasionally you do get one-shotted and die randomly, but I mean most builds experience that. This build also is very cheap to start. I would say the starting cost is maybe 1-2 divines. The biggest part of the cost of this build are minion jewels. The ghastly eye jewels can be very expensive, and I do have some of them are very good, but I crafted them myself, just alt, regal, and sometimes exalt slam when I saw a good jewel potential. So you can start like very low price and like eventually farm more currency and get better jewels and just invest more into it. However, I think like it does have its own problems as always. But you don't really need to stress too much about carrying Gritting Jar anymore. You can just Cyclone through enemies, which is a bit dangerous if you're squishy. Cyclone through enemies and just resummon those Dancing Dervish. By the way, if you don't know, the Dancing Dervish is the weapon, and you summon those weapons when you trigger, I believe, 15 rampage stacks. So in order to do that, you just hit with that weapon. But it has to be melee hit, so you can't really use range, so you still have to put yourself in danger. But you can use, I believe, Blade Storm in the sand stance and throw it like in a distance. But like minion builds always have problems with supports, and then we need so many things to automate, like Desecrate, Offering, Convocation, then Movement Ability, then another like a minion to summon, like I have a Karen Golem, then a curse, maybe even 2 curses, then another skill. So it has a lot of things, so that's why I wanted to like stay with the Cyclone. That way I can use Casual Channeling, Desecrate plus Offering in there, level 1 Casual Channeling to avoid spending too much mana too quickly unnecessarily. But Cyclone will put you in danger when you don't have your Dancing Dervishes. In some cases you have to get close to very dangerous enemies and Cyclone through them. However, I'm also using the Transfigure Cyclone, which allows me to move a bit faster at the beginning of the Cyclone, but I don't cycle for too long because then it slows me down. So it does put me in danger. However, while mapping, this is by the way using the Ancient Skull, so it does make my minions when we crit and start hearing whispers uncontrollable. I cannot even convocate them anymore, I cannot command them. However, that also makes them like very independent from you. They see enemies very far away and we just, actually not always, sometimes we just don't want to go and fight enemies. Although maybe it's because they haven't crit in the last 5 seconds, something like that. So sometimes we are like seeing enemies far away and clearing everything ahead of you. However, like I said, you cannot really control them, you cannot convocate them. So if you plan on doing something like breaches, you're gonna get surrounded by enemies and your minion just gonna peace out, leave you surrounded by all those enemies, and you won't be able to survive. Figure out what you want to do and then figure out if this build would be suited for that. So I, for example, was farming Legion and Essences, and it works really well. Although for Legion, like I said, you cannot convocate them and command them, so sometimes the only way to still kind of convocate them is to run too far away from them. Then we get Rubber Banded teleported back to you, and then very often we just fly away immediately far away again. So during Legion encounters, sometimes I don't fully clear all the Legions sometimes because I just cannot control them, but for the most part it clears, I would say, like 90, maybe even 95% of all the Legion. The Essence are also really, I would say, easy to do. I'm not sure if they nerfed Essences or something about them, but they're not as scary as they used to be before. This build is like cheap, damage is still pretty good. This has a bit over 4 million DPS. I could still get more damage. As always with investment you can get more damage. But if I were to change something, I would try to get some sort of tankiness. Even if I were to lose like 1 million DPS combined, I still have almost 5 million DPS with 2 of them combined. So I think you could still lose like 1 million and it would still feel fine if you could make yourself a lot tankier. For my tankiness, all I have is Doppelganger, which mostly mitigates physical and heals and gives me 10% life regen when I get hit for 1 second. The Necromancer gives 10% damage reduction from enemies that are next to a corpse. And that's pretty much it. Then I just have Steel Skin on automation. And yeah, that is all. There are ways to add tankiness. You could use like a bone offering and pick up necromancers, misters of sacrifice, and that will get bone offering, but not sure how would you get recover life on block, and your weapon gets disabled. So even if you try to weapon swap, you can't even weapon swap. So even if you could, the weapon slots would still be disabled. Now another thing, I recently saw Captain Lance's video about Destructive Link, and I was in the same boat as Captain Lance and thought that Destructive Link just adds whatever weapon you are holding the base crit chance to the link target. But turns out that it's supposed to scale like everything that you have. So essentially, long story short, I tried to test Destructive Link with this. When you proc the Dancing Dervish, you become unarmed. You are considered as unarmed. However, there's an amulet. Reworked scores gives you 7% to unarmed melee attack critical strike chance. So normally unarmed you have 0% base crit chance, but with this you still have 7% base crit chance. It does show in your own tooltip for the skills that you have that crit chance and you can scale it. But if you try to link it, the link target will have 0% crit chance. No matter how much we had, we're gonna have 0% crit chance because you are considered as unarmed, and it does require, the Destructive Link does require a melee or main hand weapon crit chance. And you are technically not holding a weapon anymore, and your fists, I guess, are not counted as weapons. So Destructive Link is not gonna work with the Dancing Dervish, sadly. Otherwise, I had an idea originally to start this build and play with the new helmet, the Devourer of Minds. As a Necromancer, pick up power charges and frenzy charges from the passive skill tree, and that way I would give them and use Farrell's Food to get those charges, because you also need to generate those charges. I haven't tested with the Relic Cash boost, by the way, but in the end it didn't really look very good, and I would have to spend way too many points traveling and picking up all those charges. The damage actually I think would scale better, but you would just be a lot squishier. And later I just changed into Ancient Skull because it just gives a lot more damage. However, Ancient Skull sort of prevents you, not really prevents you, but discourages you from using any other minions. So I do have Karen Golem, but I do occasionally resummon it. The Necromancer's node, the reworked node, the Bone Barrier, gives minions so much tankiness, but when we crit we still degen 20% of their life per second as CS damage. They take the damage, so we still first lose energy shield and then start losing life, but when we crit we just degen so quickly. And because minions only have like life regen and not ES regen, it becomes a bit harder to kind of sustain. Well, maybe not harder, but it doesn't make it any easier to sustain this helmet. So you would still need minion KS resistance, minion life regen in general, and you do want to link it to control destruction. We don't have Alk Quality Control Destruction. In the past you could get Alk Quality Control Destruction with 100% less crit chance, so you could still use Animate Guardian or Spectres in the past, but now they would still have around 3% crit chance, and we will eventually crit, and it's very high chance that we would die. So I did experiment trying to see if Spectres would die, and they were dying, and I don't think that you can make them survive no matter what. Maybe, but you would have to invest so much into their tankiness that what's the point of playing Dancing Dervish, which by the way has like 99% damage reduction, and it pretty much doesn't die, it barely takes damage. So like what's the point of investing into minion tankiness when your main minion is pretty much unkillable? So for that reason I just stick with the Karen Golem, which does give flat damage and also triggers Feeding Frenzy, and I just occasionally resummon it. But for Animate Guardian you could give like a Resolute Technique weapon and it would be unable to crit, but you would still want to invest a bit into minion tankiness. I do have Anointment for Grave Intentions, but you could also travel here and then anoint Indomitable Army, maybe use Bone Offering as well, maybe pick up a Decay Ward as well for them to recover life when we block, and that way we would be a bit tankier and hopefully survive. The Animate Guardian is easier to kind of make it survive because you can give it items with like Here's Res, big mega regen. The Demon of the Stitch helmet would have insane regen for Animate Guardian because all the energy shield that we are getting from the new Necromancer's node and the Grave Intentions would be sort of converted into regen, and they would be pretty much unkillable as long as we don't get one-shotted. But I still didn't want to use Animate Guardian. I wanted to keep this on the lower budget, and the jewels, if you check PUB, some of them are really nice, but like I said, I crafted them myself just simply by using transportations, alterations, and then regal if I see something potentially good, and then sometimes Exile slamming. and I got a couple of them like are really nice. This is also, by the way, fully converted into heals with the Unholy Might, reworked Unholy Might, which you do get from a natural strength. The crit chance is not very high, like 15%, and I actually managed to get 100% chance to poison, which does add quite a bit of damage, but it's not a poison build, and adding a Manamus Gaze would not really be worth it. Now, for other items, I am using the Envy Aura, which essentially just gives flat heals damage to attacks and to spells. You can get that on Elder's Amulet, and they are not very popular because people usually go for more expensive option, which is Owl's Uprising Unique Amulet, but that one is like 20 plus divines. And this one you can just craft yourself. I did also think about adding Aspect of the Spider, like even level 31, but in the end I just dropped that idea because I would have to reserve too much and would have to pick up the mana nodes and the reservation here to squeeze it in. Currently damage is 4.483 million. If I enable this, 4.9. So this is with 4 Aspect of the Spider stacks. It's not really worth it, and you are left with very little mana. You're already applying Withers, and Withers are also enemies take increased damage, and enemies take increased damage stacks with each other additively instead of multiplicatively. It's a one big multiplier, and it has diminishing returns essentially. Now for the Pantheon powers, I picked up the Soul of the Brand King. Pretty much need the freeze immunity, and reduced chill is nice, and anti-stun locking as well, and then this one for the reduced effect of shock on you, and then you can combine that with these nodes. I actually missing still one more passive. I keep dying, so I can't really level up because I keep trying to do dangerous things, but essentially I can reduce enemy shocks on me like by more than 100%. So I am pretty much almost immune to shocks, sort of. I also picked up some healers res here, and your elemental resistances cannot be lowered by curses, and that's important for this because I have just barely enough elemental resistances. Like on a cheaper version, and at the beginning you may actually want Commander of Darkness instead of this one. That way it's gonna be easier to get resistances and gear up, and then once you get some more currency and improve your equipments, you can kind of tweak your resistances and get enough resistances on gear, and then refund this and then pick up that, because this will give AoE for minions, will make enemies do reduced damage, and everyone gonna be doing 10% more damage to those enemies. And by the way, this is level 92 with a couple more levels. For level 95 you could just take these and it would be 4.8 million DPS. And if you were to also get like awakened gems are not really worth it on this one. If instead of added heals and minion damage you were to use awakened versions, 5.1 like 5.2, you're basically getting only 400k, but the price, they're like 3 divines each, and void manipulation awaken is like 7 divines each, so it's very high price for a very small increase. So you don't even need awakened gems, and you don't need a 6 link. All you need is a 6 socket, and right, you don't even need corruption. I did get a corruption one for a bit more DPS, but I also need to take a bit more minion accuracy, and the non-corrupted version has like 60% accuracy, so I don't think that you even need corrupted. And like I said, for the jewels, even for cluster jewels, you don't need to go straight away into higher budget. You can just get something for like 10, 20, 30 years and start from there, and then replace everything later. You want physical damage for minions, heals damage, obviously life for yourself, but the problem is that poison SRS is very meta. Whenever it's meta, it's gonna be expensive because everyone wants those. So anything that gives minion heals or minion physical damage is probably gonna be expensive. And you do need also chance to poison. You kind of have to calculate how much and how many jewels and how much chance to poison you're gonna need on the build to reach 100%. And by the way, one drawback of this build is that when your minions are hitting 45 times per second and they roll into like 50 to 100 enemies, and we start applying a couple thousand poison stacks per second, it kind of kills FPS and the performance goes down a lot. So yeah, keep that in mind in case you got a slower PC. So yeah, I think that's about it for this build. I will continue playing this build. I still haven't figured out the next build. I have like simple ideas like some kind of specters, and I may actually do that, but for now I think I'm gonna continue farming with this build. It's very like chill playstyle. I tried like Cirrus and Guardians, and what else did I try? And like a normal Shaper. Cirrus was a bit annoying because the phases are too long and you lose Dancing Dervish. you have to resummon it again, which is annoying because Sirius also likes to teleport around like a chicken. So you may actually need to carry Breathing Jar. But for most other things, you don't really need to worry about Breathing Jar. Oh, one more thing. The Cyclone setup. Essentially, for the Cyclone, all you need is to cast Desecrate and Offering. But you don't need high level Desecrate, all you need is high level Offering. And you also don't need to spam it too much. So you don't want to level Casual Channeling too much. Because the higher level will increase the proc rate and is gonna like spam Desecrate and Offering too frequently, and you're gonna run out of mana. So I also have Inspiration linked to it to lower the mana cost. And another thing, Spell Cascade. You don't need to worry about it too much, but the Spell Cascade is only for one reason, and that is this thing. Because without Spell Cascade you would create 5 corpses and destroy 5 corpses. And there would be no corpse left against single target, and you do need at least one corpse nearby for this Plague Bringer to even work. So yeah, the Spell Cascade is for that reason only. So if you don't take this Plague Bringer and instead go for Commander of Darkness or even the Mistress of Sacrifice for some tankiness, you don't even need a 6 link for Spell Cascade. You may not even need Inspiration, so you could probably get away with Falling, and the Doppelganger is very cheap, like 2 Divines for a 6 link with decent rolls, like that's very cheap. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye. Ah, what? Why was it spinning that way? Stupid melons.